We're unpacking abstract nouns and putting the participants back into the process. Unpacking abstract nouns and putting the participants back into the process of colonisation. Because colonisation isn't a moment in time, it's not a place in Australia, it's a process. And we can understand it by putting the participants back into the process and asking who's doing what and how do they affect each other? How does one participant affect each other? What are the actives? What are the actions and motives of participants in that process? What participants are we talking about? Let's talk about government. Let's talk about First Nations. Let's talk about the church. Let's talk about free settlers and convicts. Push factors and pull factors, women, disease, alcohol, factors of production, land, labour, capital, the agrarian revolution and the industrial revolution being replicated in Australia. We're unpacking abstract nouns and putting the participants back into the process. Let's start with the British government, because decisions by the British government can be traced to individual people. Lord Sydney gives his name to Sydney, the first colony in New South Wales. And you might know him by another name, Turnip Townsend. That's right, that innovator in the agrarian revolution. What are his actions and motives? What evidence is there? Well, quite a bit, actually. And what about his relationship with the first governor in New South Wales, Arthur Phillip? These guys know each other. Captain Arthur Phillip. What does it say about the British Empire's priority is in Australia, that they only sent a captain to begin the colonisation of New South Wales? What about Aboriginal people, Aboriginal leaders? And can we talk about them as separate participants? What are the actions and motives of individual people that we can identify? Now let's talk about the church. Christian missionaries are a pretty significant participant in the process. Often in the process of colonisation, they are the first to arrive, and their actions and motives are pretty easy to identify. Then the free settlers, a distinct group to the convicts, perhaps. People who go out on the land pursuing opportunities. That leads us to pull factors. What are the pull factors drawing people to come to the colonies? Why would they choose to come here? What's this about land? What's this about gold? What's this about opportunities? What are they? And put them up against the push factors that we already know about. The Industrial Revolution and the Agrarian Revolution and the Closure Act. People being pushed off their land, pushed into cities, becoming part of crime waves. Faced with disease, poor living and working conditions. Push factors. But we're talking about pull factors. If people come to the colonies seeking opportunities, and if they do make a fortune, what's to stop them from going back to the mother country with their money? Why would they stay in the colony? Let's talk about women, because there's a shortage of women in the colonies, clearly, isn't there? There's not a lot of women in the First Fleet. Where do they come from? And how are settlers going to settle down and build on their opportunities and live that dream if they can't establish families and communities? And how can they do that without women? So what efforts are being made to entice women to come to the colonies? Now, we're talking about cause and effect. The number one most significant impact is disease. Now, does the colony benefit from the massive impact that disease has on Aboriginal people? It's pretty easy to see how they benefit. We can explore that further. But before that, when we talk about motives and actions, we need to be careful, because it's very hard to find evidence of intent when you're accusing someone of committing a crime like genocide. What evidence is there that Europeans intended to introduce disease? And what evidence is there that they might have known about it from previous experiences, such as the colonisation of South America? The First Fleet stopped at Rio de Janeiro. What about alcohol? Massive impact there as well. What role did alcohol play in the early days of the colonisation? Quite a lot, in fact. You'll find it functioned as a currency until the arrival of Lachlan Macquarie. But there was wool and wheat on the First Fleet, and that means production. How was the colony going to eat if nothing was produced? all the future wealth of the colony was going to be built on production, on the land. That's where all these opportunities come from. So we can think about the land as a factor of production. Let's borrow that economics work we already know about land, labour and capital. So the land isn't just a place to dump people, it's a place where the future wealth of the colony will be built. And what about labour? Well, the convicts are labour. Why is the British government planning to import its own labour force? Well, there's one motive, just to get rid of people. A massive population explosion and the crime wave that's happened as a result of the Industrial Revolution. But the experience of the Agrarian Revolution also shows that nothing can be produced without labour. There's no plan to use the local population. Why doesn't the British government plan to use the local population in production? Is it because they know from the South American experience that population is not going to survive? We're unpacking abstract nouns and putting the participants back into the process, being aware that the Agrarian Revolution and the Industrial Revolution are about to be replicated in the New World. Unpacking abstract nouns and putting the participants back into the process.